Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing a review of Doctor Who Spare Parts. Now, sorry if obviously I sound a bit different or anything. I've got a bit of a cold, or quite a bit of a cold, so yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, also another little bit of a disclaimer of sorts. This isn't mine, it's a Big Finish audio that I'm borrowing from my friend Michael over at the YouTube channel Nerd Central. So yeah, thanks for that one, buddy. Yeah, so that out of the way. You've got 10th Planet Cybermen there. You got this sort of like sort of circular design thing there, like drawing into the eye. Telos, I think it is, sort of symbol and or logo, and then there you've got Peter Davison. You've got the old Doctor Who 1996 TV movie sort of logo and or Jon Pertwee one, Spare Parts, Peter Davison in, and then like some of the other cast and people, Big Finish, and then on the inside you've got disc as well as sort of the cast list and writer's notes and things like that. Then on the spine you've got Doctor Who Spare Parts. You've got a picture of Peter Davison there, I think. Doctor Who Spare Parts 34, which means that it's the 34th release in the monthly range. Big Finish again. Then you've got the synopsis and who wrote it, how many parts it is, who directed it, all that, and then the sort of running time and all that. So it's 100 minutes. So yeah, essentially Doctor Who Spare Parts is the predecessor to the recently released Doctor Who story, World Enough in Time. So if you've watched that, this is essentially a Big Finish audio version of that story. But then again, this one came out first. This one released back in 2002. So and that was pretty much essentially a Cyberman version of Genesis of the Daleks. As prior to this release, this Big Finish audio release, the Cybermen had never really got an origin story. Now, we'd seen them in William Hartnell's last story, The 10th Planet, but we never knew, like, enough, like, you know, the origins of the Cybermen or Mundas, or, do you know what I mean? We just sort of knew enough in that sort of story to tell a story, if that makes sense. We knew enough about the Cybermen that we knew that they were a threat, and we knew that Mundas was Earth's twin planet, and we knew that that was a bad thing because I think in that story, from what I remember, Mundas was going to collide with Earth and or destroy Earth, I think, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, Pete Davison is phenomenal in this story. I actually really like him. He's really good. I don't know what it is, he just plays the part really well. Plays it, as I say, well. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze then. Plays it well, and, you know, has this sort of investigator, Sherlock Holmes, almost like role for the longest time in this story. The Cybermen, again, sound phenomenal. And then there's this sort of thing called the the Council. I was going to say the Cyber Council, but I think it's just called the Council, which, for those of you, much like myself, who are more in sort of the Daleks over the Cybermen, my comparison would be, Dalek comparison would be that the Council are essentially the Cybermen equivalent, or the Dalek equivalent is a Dalek Emperor, so that's basically what I got from the Council. They're essentially the Cyberman equivalent of a Dalek Emperor. So they're the people who are, or the sort of people in the hierarchy above the normal Cybermen. It's got that sort of body horror aspect, you know, with the whole sort of them going through the graveyards to find people, which is disgusting, obviously. Just this sort of constant sort of need to upgrade everyone and that, and, the story's called Spare Parts for a reason. Jesus, it's pretty grim. The Doctor bumps into this sort of black market sort of character who also trades sort of organs and body parts and that, so... But yeah, there's these Doctor-like characters as well, who are essentially like the characters even we see in World Enough in Time, but way more fleshed out, because obviously it's an old school sort of 4-part classic Who story. Now, one thing that I did find interesting was a lot of the dialogue between Pete Davidson's Fifth Doctor and Nyssa. Nyssa being the predominant companion, or the only companion in this story, really, in terms of traditional sort of Doctor Who companions from the classic series. She's the only one in this story. But what I found really interesting is the sort of dialogue between the two of them, very reminiscent of the Doctor Who story, The Fires of Pompeii. In the classic series, what's odd is sort of Second Doctor to Seventh Doctor, although the Doctor could travel into the past of planets and places and countries and whatnot, they never seem to really mention about the fact that actually, obviously, changing history would be a bad thing. I think the First Doctor, there was that sort of thing there quite a bit, because obviously the First Doctor was a lot more stern, a lot more sort of like official, and a lot more sort of, to say the least, less reckless than his future incarnations would be about that sort of thing. And as I say, it's only really mentioned in the new series quite prominently and quite a lot in the David Tennant era, from what I remember thinking back to it, thinking back to it in my brain of sorts. I feel like it's mentioned quite a few times that he can't sort of just go back and interfere with stuff in the Russell T. Davies era, that the Doctor can't just interfere with timelines, which, as I say, in the classic series, besides William Hartnell's Doctor, I don't think it was very much a big sort of thing that they ever sort of dived into and that, but here it's quite prominent, in the sense that obviously this takes, although we're with a future Doctor from obviously William Hartnell's Doctor, we're in the past, before what happened in the 10th Planet, so the Fifth Doctor, Pete Davidson's Doctor, knows of what's to come and what's going to happen. And also, I think the events of Earthshock have just happened as well, because there's quite a few references to Adric and his death and that, so there's a lot of grim sort of people dying and a lot of sort of body horror stuff. As I say, we meet this family, spoiler alert, but someone gets converted in said family, gets converted and then meets that family again, and that was pretty heartbreaking and pretty intense. I mean, my major two criticisms would be the fact that they use the Tom Baker intro and outro, which kind of bothers me and takes me out of the immersion a little bit. Audio quality is not brilliant overall. And then thirdly, I can't quite even remember how the sort of Cybermen are defeated, really, which is quite bad of the story. Either it's on the story's part, or maybe it was just me sort of losing a little bit of interest towards the latter end, maybe. It's very much about the characters and the relationship the characters have with one another, and things along that line. There was definitely a twist to about part 3 with the Doctor and the Cybermen that I won't spoil here. There's definitely a lot of different twists and turns, and I think that might keep quite a few people on the edge of their seat. I think, I don't know why, but I couldn't 110% focus on the story. Maybe it's just because I'm not feeling too well as of this recording, and therefore kind of need something a lot more lighthearted than a fairly dark, fairly sort of heavy, intense Doctor Who Big Finish audio listen. and or story to listen to. Maybe I need something, as I say, a bit more comedic and a bit more lighthearted. But yeah, I mean, as I say, there's a lot of parallels between this story and World Enough and Time. So if you liked World Enough and Time and have watched a substantial amount of classic Doctor Who, but have never really got into the Big Finish audios, if you can find this one on eBay or Amazon or wherever, then I recommend trying to pick this one up physically, maybe download it, maybe buy the vinyl if you have a vinyl player, record player-y thing. It's definitely regarded as a very top-tier sort of Big Finish audio. And that, because again, it shines light on the Cybermen, and Mark Platt very, very much understands the nitty-gritty and the complexity of the Cybermen, that they're not just, robots. They do parallel us as a race, but what's grim and dark and stingy and horrible and horrific about them is the idea that they're like us, but not in the sense that they don't have what makes us us, which is our quote-unquote heart, or not heart, but quote-unquote soul and heart and feelings and, the ability to empathise with one another. Yes, they're efficient, yes, they're moving forward, and yes, they were predominantly made for the people of Mundas to survive, but as the Doctor consistently sort of preaches in this story, at what cost? Is this really survival anymore? You're essentially just a walking tin soldier or tin can person, with no real identity, no real purpose beyond just filling out that one order and just being quote-unquote efficient, or do you know what I mean? Like, there's no creative freedom, there's no empathy, there's no free will, you've lost all that just to survive. Wouldn't you want to just die at that point? If you had to get rid of what made you to survive, would you be willing to do that or not? Again, the characters of the family are really cool as well. Like, there's a lot of cool interactions with them. They're fairly fleshed out. The dad's pretty cool. As is the son. There's decent sort of, for lack of a better term, banter or just dialogue between them that makes them feel like a fairly fleshed out and real sort of family. There's a lot of world building, a lot of sort of stuff about like what Mundas looks like, where we are on Mundas. Like, in the 10th planet, in my head, we're on the surface of Mundas, and that's why it's so cold, and that's why there's Cybermen there. Whereas actually, these people aren't. They're not all Cybermen yet. They're being converted into it, and there's that sort of process, and we're leading into the 10th planet by the end of this story, and that. But what is prominent or predominant is the fact that, say, in World Enough and Time, they have those giant, sort of levels of that spaceship and big giant sheets of metal where the sky should be. Yeah, here they have like that, but in my head it's like under sort of massive caverns of ice and stingy sort of dark world that's under this sort of cave, this massive cave that they've inhabited. And as I say, they've got these trams and they've got these sort of shops and towns, but the thing is, as soon as it's sort of, well, I was going to say dark, but they're underground, so it's always dark, but when it gets to a certain point, it's referred to as curfew, and then they've got like these boarded windows, and they can't really sort of freely leave their homes at a certain time because there's Cybermen, or they're the police of sorts, they're enforcing this sort of law upon them, and again, it's a very dark, stingy, sort of old, sort of decaying world, and the people are very sort of desperate, and when people are desperate, radical things happen. Just look at, obviously, history for that, look at Germany when, Hitler took over, or any sort of desperate time in austerity leads people to be irrational and just quickly say, yes, I agree with that, because their emotions they're so unbelievably sort of crushed as people that any sort of immediate positive, I can change this sort of dark and stingy and sort of grim situation, immediately becomes, yes, you can do that, even without a second thought for people, because again, they're in this sort of dark rut, and that's where the people of Mundas are at with this sort of situation in this sort of story, or at least that's the impression I get. So yeah, it's a good story if you're really into sort of characters, characters, good dialogue between characters, world building, and the Cybermen and or the Fifth Doctor. It's a very good Fifth Doctor story. It's also the first Fifth Doctor sort of story I've ever reviewed here on the channel, as I don't have any Fifth Doctor stories, unfortunately, in the Big Finish Audio sort of universe of sorts. So yeah, I'd give Spare Parts a well-earned 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching, comment, rate, and subscribe.